and I'm just waiting for my camera to catch up with my technology and vice versa. I believe I'm live now. Camera is go. So, hello everyone, my name is Trudy and I'm here today to talk about unfragmenting your life and how my journey of making peace with God, masculine and feminine energy, and metaphysics completed a journey of transformation that I began over a decade ago. So, who am I? I am a life coach. I'm a mentor. I am somebody who truly believes that when we give ourselves permission, we can fully embrace a life full of purpose and meaning, and we can release the shackles of shame and guilt and judgment to really be at peace within ourselves. And to get started, what I would love to see is if you could give this post some love, if you have ever actually felt alone before, if you've ever felt that you are walking this world on your own, even for a moment. And I don't think there's anyone live yet, but if you are watching the replay, you still interact with the live, because I'd love you to drop an emoji in the comments if you have ever felt like you couldn't be yourself. You had to wear the mask that society dictates that you wear. Hi, Patty. Nice to have an audience. And also, would you agree that by having a solid foundation in which to live your life, it makes life easier? And if you agree with that, type yes in the comments. Yep, Patty's in there. Patty's dropped me a yes. Awesome. We are going to have a great day, Patty. Well, a great few moments together here. Anyway. So, look, I'm laughing because I'm in a really happy space in my life. But I want to acknowledge that in this busy world that we live in, it can feel really uncertain, this landscape with the pandemic. And I'm truly blessed that in Australia, we seem to have gotten a hold on it. We're progressing with it. But in the space of all of the lockdowns and the loss of life and the total shift in how we live our day to day, there's a huge rise of depression, and people are really feeling disconnected. What was our traditional way of living is gone, and it has been replaced with levels of uncertainty. We can't deny that. And with the internet, even with the internet, where we have the world at our fingertips, there is still this feeling in so many people, or maybe the feeling was already there, but we can't hide from it anymore. This feeling of being disconnected. And homelessness is on the rise with everything that's been happening. And I have to admit, I was doing some research on it, and it really triggered me to see that women over 50 are the fastest growing demographic of homeless women in Australia. Now, I'm not 50 yet. I'm not quite there yet, but I am closer to 50 than I am 40. And not to even forget about, there's still war going on in this world. We had the war to end all wars, but it didn't really change anything. We are constantly bombarded with negative press. Even in our Facebook feed, the marketing tells us that we're too much or we're not enough. We're not the right shape, size. We don't look the right way. We don't do the right things. We're not loud enough. We're too loud. In all of this, the chatter and the noise and the bombardment, it is so easy to feel alone. And, over the last decade, I've been studying human potential. And something that I have realized is there are a lot of strategies out there for connection and feeling good and, If you clean out all your cupboards and fold things a certain way, you'll have inner peace, sort of thing. So it's not a strategy problem that we have, but what I believe with all of the people that I've coached, what I see online, the articles that I read, is that we actually have a spiritual problem. We have a real spiritual problem. And yet the inner chatter Patty, Patty's got it. She gets it. And so in this time, and especially in the last 3 years, I really discovered in healing my own God wound, I was able to learn and embrace the polarity of masculine and feminine energy, as well as really embrace the spirituality and the science, because they really are the same thing. I was able to place a foundation in to support all of the other healing that I'd been actioning. Because we've all heard the stories before, when you build a house, you've got to have the solid foundation or the walls eventually tip and collapse and all that kind of stuff. We know that stuff. So while I had been doing so much healing and come so far, and when I share my story, this will make sense, I was actually able to use all of these tools and all of this healing to come home to myself. And this is why I'm sharing this, because when you can really sit in that space of who you really are, your life can't help but transform. So this is what I'm here to share. And as I move through this presentation, please type your questions or your thoughts or anything in the comments as we're going. If I can see the question and comment at the time, I'll answer, or I will be available at the end to answer any questions that you might have. If you are watching the replay of this, just type #replay when you watch the replay, so then I know where you're at, and I'll still come back later on and answer any questions that come through. And I know that I'm long time lurker, not often time poster in your group, Patty. But I know there's a lot of people in here that don't know me. And so something that you might not know about me, even if you have met me before, is that 38 years ago, way back in primary school, I actually denounced my faith. I was raised Catholic. I'd gone through all the scripture lessons and everything, but this particular year was a really, really painful year. My cousin, who was my age, had passed away due to cystic fibrosis. I saw for the second time a family dog get hit by a car and die. And it was around this time that my father stopped coming to visit me. My parents were divorced when I was quite young. And so he became absent. I was just constantly bullied at school. I was miserable, and I was still figuring out how to process some abuse that had happened to me growing up. And one of the challenges that I'd had at this time was the priest who taught our Catholic religion classes in my school always used me as the example of the bad child when sharing stories to teach lessons about good and bad. If there was a child that lied, it was me. If there was a child that stole something, it was me. And where religion was supposed to be a safe space for me, even that space had been taken away. So I reached my breaking point. I was done. So this particular day, I came home from school and I stood out in the backyard, and I was still young enough that I didn't really think about other people hearing what I was about to do. But I yelled up to God in the sky, because that's where God lives, in the sky, right? I yelled up to God that I hated him, that why would he do this to me, that all I wanted to do was love him. I wanted to be a good girl. I wanted to feel safe to go to church. I wanted to be a good Catholic girl, right? And I just had thing after thing after thing happening. And so I yelled up at him that I hated him and that I would rather go to hell and burn in hell than ever set foot in church again. That he was gone to me, because what he was doing to me was wrong. It wasn't fair. And it was, upon reflection, it's pretty powerful stuff for a little kid in primary school to do. But I denounced God, not understanding at the time the repercussions that would come through to me. Hi, Rita. Now, 26 years ago was my first suicide attempt. I had been medicated by a doctor when I came to see him for something completely non-related to mental health. And so I went on to antidepressants, being a good girl, doing what the doctor told me. And I'd had all this unresolved trauma that, stuff happened as a teenager, was bubbling away under the surface. And then I stopped taking the tablets. Now, I went cold turkey because nobody told me that that was potentially a bad thing. And for me, it was a really bad thing. I ended up overdosing, getting taken away to hospital, getting my stomach pumped and all of the things. And what resulted from this after a 3 or 4 day stay in an asylum was everyone around me telling me how bad I'd made them feel. So in that moment, that could have been a really healing moment for me, became a space that became laid in shame and guilt and judgment. So in that process, I took it all on board and I decided just to pretend my life was good, which resulted in me becoming a party princess, ending up with a drug addiction, and ending up going through 2 more cycles of suicide and depression until something happened. And I got to this space where I realized that I was the one common denominator in my own life. And if anything was going to change in my life, it was going to be me. So in that decision point, I didn't realize just how much by making that decision to stop being a victim to my past would impact the rest of my life. And let's face it, whether it's medication or alcohol or tobacco or food, we all have different ways to self-soothe and escape, right? But after this realization, it was then 14 years ago that I discovered personal development and started a certificate in life coaching. And that's when things really started to transform for me. I hadn't yet healed the God wound. That was 3 years ago, but it was the start of the pathway of me going, I don't have to carry anymore what people have put on my shoulders, especially if it makes me feel bad. And so this is why I've dedicated my life now to supporting people to release the shame, release the judgment, release the guilt around the past, to heal those wounds so they can remove a feeling of separation and aloneness that they have. And I do this through the metaphysics, releasing of any of those wounds. For me, it was a God wound. For other people, it can show up as a friend wound, a mother wound, whatever it is, but so people can feel loved and safe and supported in their own lives. So today I'm going to cover off 3 components that really allowed me, and it was really in the last 3 years or so that I got to this final sort of completion of what I feel my healing process was. I'm going to share those with you today. So we're going to have a look at metaphysics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the God wound, and then the law of polarity and the embracing of feminine versus masculine energy. So drop me an emoji or a thumbs up or something in the comments if you are ready to go. Because I'm ready to go. I get very excited about these things. Oh, where's everybody gone? All right, remember, hashtag replay. So now we're going to dive into metaphysics. Metaphysics is, or spiritual law, depending on your take on it, is what Aristotle called the first philosophy or wisdom. So it explores the nature of existence and the rules that we live in. And we have human people rules, but we have rules of nature. Now, these rules of nature, they don't change. They are a never-changing constant. And so when you embrace these laws of energy, the laws of nature, and implement them into your life, you can't help but elevate and transform. And if you're in Patty's group, I imagine you want to elevate and transform. So I could talk for hours on these laws, I tell you, but I'm going to cherry pick a few. I'm going to talk about the law of vibration, and I will mention the law of correspondence, and I'll talk more about the law of polarity as well. So, law of vibration, it's quite simple. Nothing is at rest. Everything is moving. The tiniest little bit of matter, it's vibrating. And what happens when things vibrate? They send out a frequency. Now, I didn't know this when I was little, when I was a child and denouncing God and separating this foundation of faith that I had in my life, separating that away from me. I didn't realize that I was changing my vibration. I was changing what was happening for me. So being aware of vibration, you can't escape it. Everything moves. And remembering in this vibration, the frequency that it's sending out, like attracts like. So whatever your cells in your body is vibrating at, that's what you're actually sending out and what you're attracting back in. So it's your job. I'm giving you a job. It is your job to generate positive purpose emotions. It's your job. You need to deliberately choose your field, your energy, because the universe is mental and it's governed by this law of vibration, and it's also governed by the law of correspondence. As within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. So your inner game, what you are thinking is feeding your vibration, which is feeding your frequency and is attracting in what's happening in your life. Now, when I learned this, I was like, mind blown. And why is this important when healing the God wound? Well, like I said, back in the day, I didn't understand. I was walking around separate from the foundational thing that I'd established in my young life that was always there, ever present, and I'd taken myself away from it. So my vibration became one of, I'm alone, I'm a victim, I have nothing. Patty, you've got it. Vibration and frequency is powerful. And like what Patty said, you get to choose. So this is your job. I was this like little human drudge walking around as a victim, pretending to be happy, artificial high, which didn't last. And because I was up here vibrating in a space that wasn't natural, the crash down was bad. My inner game was not one of somebody who was a whole and complete human. I was separate. I was fragmented. So when you understand that you are vibrating and what you are thinking is creating a frequency that you put out into the universe, as above, so below, as the universe, so the soul, you get to choose and make a conscious decision around what you are sending out. You know, I love the law of correspondence, and there's also the law of cause and effect. Are you at cause or are you at effect? Thanks, Rita. Rita agrees. In case you're going, what? Who's Rita? Rita just agrees with what I said. So it's really important that your inner game, that you choose to become fully responsible for that. Because even back after my final suicide attempt, when I didn't realize the law of correspondence, the law of vibration, cause and effect, by making that decision, one decision, I am my own common denominator. No one is coming to rescue me. If I'm going to live a happy life, it has to be up to me. I need to take back my power, stepping into that space of cause, shifting my vibration, starting to make conscious choices about my inner world, which then reflected out into my actions. That was my first huge step in coming back and unfragmenting myself and becoming whole again. So that's a big part. Like, drop a heart, or, you know, Michelle, have you heard of Metaphysics? Give me a thumbs up if you're into vibration and frequency. Rita, Patty's already said she is. So now I want to talk about the God wound. Now, The God wound was huge for me because I had that as a foundation of my life. For other people, like I said, the mother wound, the friend wound, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it was the God wound. And by removing God from my life, the repercussions of that and removing that foundation echoed through. I had disconnected myself from a very, very loving source of energy. And childhood is where our values and our beliefs form. And my childhood values and beliefs, faith, trust, integrity, it was all built on those things. And then when all these bad things just kept happening over and over and over in my first 10, 12 years of life, and losing God tore open a really big wound. So it can look like different things for everyone. My experience of a God wound, of religious trauma, is going to be different to anyone else. And if you feel like you have a God wound, it's definitely worth exploring. So for me, it really triggered a massive break from family. I already had trouble making friends. It just made it even harder. I've always been a little bit of a solo mover. Don't get too close sort of thing. And I'm still working on healing that. But as a teenager, I became withdrawn, self-harmed. I was a mess because the foundation was gone. So that's how it showed up for me. So how do you heal it, right? That's probably the big question. How do you heal a God wound? Look, it's going to be different for everyone. It's beautiful because you actually get to choose. I was really blessed. Back in end of 2018, I had a coach who identified the God wound and the massive wound with the masculine that I was still struggling with. And I'm going to talk more about the masculine sort of energy a little bit later as well. My thing was with him was a huge intervention. He let me yell and scream and cry and rant at him for at least 20 minutes on a Zoom call. This was in a mastermind group that I was in. It was like, I think, 10 other people on the call. They're all just like, whoa. But he stood in proxy, not only for God, my father, the men that had abused me, all of the hurt, and he just absorbed it. He took it. He apologized. And after that, it was very, very cathartic. Very, very cathartic. Now, that kind of healing, it's not for everyone. If that's not for you, we know these days that there are beautiful coaching processes like Patty, myself, there's other coaches. We know these amazing processes where you don't even have to say what's wrong. If you identify a feeling within yourself, or there's a significant event from your childhood that has a either really negative charge or a hyper positive charge around it, you don't even need to talk about it. Get yourself a really good coach to help you clear it, because when you clear those emotions and those charges and open up the space to allow in love and healing, you can't help but raise that vibration that you have. And in the raising of your vibration, your frequency changes. You're calling in more of the good things that you want, right? Because here's the thing, I spent most of my life saying that God didn't matter. I didn't need God. I'll just go to purgatory or something, or go to hell, but I didn't realize there was a wound about it. And it really made a huge difference to heal that wound. And whatever your version of God is your version of God. There is no judgment here, whether it's a religious or a more spiritual sort of faith following that you do. My point is, when you heal any wounding you have around it, you get to come back to a place of wholeness, which is an absolute gift. And just give the post a like or something. Let me know you're still there. Remember, you can post your questions in the comments if you have any questions. And I agree with you, Rita, reclaiming power is the beginning of the journey. So I've mentioned masculine. I've mentioned, coaching and tapping. Tapping is another way. Yep, that's great, Rita. I like that. So I've talked about metaphysics, I've talked about my experience with the God wound, and I just want to touch on masculine and feminine, or the law of polarity, right? So this is another metaphysical law, and I just want people to understand there's two types of energy. So we think of them as masculine and feminine, or yin and yang. They're not based on biological gender. Oh, thanks, Craig. It's not based on biological gender, because as humans, we have both type of energy available to us, and we can tap into both energies. We can use both energies, and we can be authentic and happy for our life. Now, in relation to my story, and with plenty of women that I've worked with, it wasn't actually safe for me to be in that feminine energy. And because I'd absented God from my life, and my father wasn't there, and all of the things, I'd stepped in to be my own dad kind of thing. I won't say my own God, because that might sound a bit weird. But I spent most of my life living in this really masculine state, because just I had its constant evidence showing up. And let's admit it'll be all about my vibration attracting certain things in, right? I had this energy that masculine energy was dangerous. Men were mean. Men would hurt you. So I would step into that as a protective measure. And I forgot all about being who I truly was. I pushed aside the feminine side and was super hyper aggressive, especially in my career, standing up defiantly to my CEO and telling him he was wrong, and then being called aggressive. I'm sure there's lots of ladies out there that can agree with this. But I'm not turning this into a feminist rant, I promise. But staying in that masculine state, because I didn't have God, I didn't have dad, I had massive distrust of men, meant that I was denying, again, the core of who I am, that beautiful feminine flow. You know, masculine energy is seen as strong and purposeful and focused, go and do the thing, whereas the feminine is more flowing and allowing and more receiving, right? So this is why we have both. But I'd fully denied my own feminine essence, so it didn't feel safe. It didn't feel safe. So learning about metaphysics, the law of polarity, and it was very important to understand the law of polarity. I'm going to get a little personal here. In personal relationships, if both of us are in masculine energy, so I date men, there's no polarity, there's no tension, there's no energy, there's no pull or connection. It's just we're all over here, and the intimacy dies because the attraction dies, because we're existing in the same energy. So no wonder, like, so many of my relationships failed, because I was always fighting my core of who I am. And so really understanding, oh, Patty, I'll tell you anything about my life. But really understanding this feminine and the polarity and the charge between the masculine and the feminine, I stopped pushing and working 12 or 14-hour days. I stopped having to be right. I understood the joy and the beauty in being able to let go of feeling I had to control everything. I was able to exist in this space of self-worth and self-love, and started doing things that I really loved to do. Like I let my partner lead in the relationship. Doesn't mean he walks all over me, but I let him lead. I let him make decisions. I'm not hyper vigilant and having to control everything, because I know that I'm a whole person. I'm allowing the flow, and I don't feel that I have to be in defensive, protective energy anymore. So that was another huge thing, like an unexpected byproduct of healing the God wound and embracing a more spiritual, loving God into my life, and a whole metaphysical world. And look, it's been a process. It has been a process. And it's been that constant choosing. I've decided I'm going to make the choices and take the actions that follow on about that. I give myself permission now. I'm going back to dancing soon, as soon as I find my dance shoes. But I give myself permission to play and to flow, and I don't have to be so rigid and push anymore. And so in healing the God wound, embracing metaphysics, learning about the law of polarity, and giving myself permission to step back into my true nature of who I really am, who I always was, and remembering that I am whole and complete just as who I am. I'm a perfect child of God. That allowed me to completely transform my life and come into a place that, back in the day when I didn't like myself very much, I never expected that I could get here. Now, I don't go to church every week. I don't take communion. I don't have a Bible. I don't judge myself if I say the wrong things, or I'm no longer unkind to myself if I don't get something right the first time. I'm not following religion, but I have faith again, and I've given myself permission to fill that empty void from my childhood, and doing all of that was huge. Restoring a foundation of faith in my life really filled that void, and it allowed me to open up to more, which is why I share this. Understanding spiritual law, it's given me the foundation, the absolute foundation that I was missing previously in my life, that kept me wandering and kept me feeling vulnerable and kept the defenses up. The law of correspondence and the law of cause and effect and the law of polarity. If you're into the law of attraction, go and also research the law of repulsion. These are the biggest gifts I could have ever given to myself, because these laws are unchanging. They're constant. They are in the universe. We can either fight them, which is kind of pointless, or we can absolutely embrace them. And it's the biggest gift that I could give myself. And I hope this has given you some inspiration around how these things could work for you. I will forever be grateful to my coach who shared with me his knowledge, who gave me the space to let that open up that toxic wound that I didn't know was there, and just let it all out. For me, healing and growth and transformation, it's a lifelong journey. But when you remove that feeling of singularity from your life, that feeling that you walk this pathway alone, and remember the magic and the wonder of the world, and give yourself permission to come home to the true nature of who you are, and that being that you are always worthy, you are always loved, that's when you allow yourself to come home to you. So thank you for watching today. And if you want to follow any of my work, I have a YouTube channel, Global Sparkles TV. There's more stuff on metaphysics and everything in there if you want to check out some more of my talkings. And I would love to say thank you, Patty. Thank you, Patty, for inviting me to speak today. It's been an absolute gift to connect with your people. And if there are any questions, please feel free to pop them in. My life is pretty much an open book. I'm always happy to share. And I can always pop back and answer questions later. And until then, thank you so much. And remember, you are loved, you are safe, you are worthy. It was always the truth in the moment of your birth until now. Thank you.